But for someone that lives in Auckland, I do find myself talking a bit about Wellington Council because, well, they keep catching my eye, you see. And the latest is including the approval of the formation of a regional water services entity, collaborating with Upper Hutt, Hutt City, Porirua and Greater Wellington Regional Council. The new council-controlled organisation, or CCO, will manage drinking water, wastewater and stormwater assets. The aim is to address their long-standing underinvestment in infrastructure. Additionally, the council has confirmed a 12% rates increase, including a 1.4% sludge levy. And while some projects like the Courtney Place revitalisation and the social housing improvements retain their funding, others, including the Pāneki Pōneki bike network and various transport initiatives, will be rescaled or delayed. And the council says this will result in significant savings. What else? They've decided to keep the community facilities such as Begonia House and Kandala Pool operational. And furthermore, this actually was the one that first caught my eye. A new $1 an hour fee for Central City motorcycle parking bays will be introduced. In fact, I think it started today, capped at $6 a day. So there is quite a bit. And representing the Northern Ward is Wellington Councillor Ben McNulty, and he joins me now. Ben, good afternoon.
Kia ora, Leah. Thank you for having me.
Hey, Ben, thanks for your patience too, my friend. I know we were supposed to talk a little earlier, but here we are. Hey, in all honesty, Ben, I'm really interested in the charging of the motorcycles, but there's a lot going on. So before we get to that, the new regional water entity, what's the big gain here? How does it actually fix or help fix Wellington's long-standing water issues?
No, very good question. There's really two key points, and this is all from the government's local water done well reforms flowing down to councils to then make the decisions, if you'll excuse the pun there. So the two critical things are, firstly, the politicians are out of the water funding decisions. So these new water entities that are propping up, not just in Wellington, but around the country, they are going to have their own decisions on how much they fund water. And if anything's happened in Wellington, it's that there hasn't been the political courage over decades for mayors, councillors to front up and put the money that's required for pipes. So that's the really first critical part. The second part is that they're going to be able to borrow a lot more. That does mean it needs to be paid back, but we still need to get a pipeline, again, water pun, of work actually going so that we have efficiencies and economies of scale. So they'll be able to borrow up to basically a 500% debt to revenue ratio. At the moment, the council is 280%. So one, they're going to have a lot more money to get going. And two, they're not going to have that short-termism of politicians sort of deferring or sweating the assets out. It's a big call as to, whether it will work. The challenge in Wellington is immense, but it is a definite step of improvement from the status quo with Wellington Water.
And some good puns in there too, Ben. I appreciate that. Hey, some of the big projects like the Pāneki Pōneki bike network and various transport initiatives will be rescaled or delayed, but still the 12% rate rise. Why not actually stop some of these projects instead of they'll end up costing future ratepayers?
Yeah, so the critical thing is borrowing has these really big numbers, like $100 million for a project, but it takes about $100 million of borrowing to get to about 1% on the rates because, when you're borrowing for a pool or Golden Mile, it's paid back over decades. What's really driving the rate are your operational costs, your fixed reoccurring costs, so wages, utilities, insurance, all those types of things. And the council just has, frankly, not been interested in investigating those. Back in December, Councillor Calvert actually put forward an amendment that said instead of 12.8% rates increase, can we have ways to get it down to 10%? So just a very small haircut, and that was just asked as an amendment to bring to councillors. That was voted down 12-6. So the interest of the councillors and the mayor around the table on trying to get the rates down has been zero. There has been no interest, so we've ended up with the rate rise that we've ended up with because councillors don't want to look at alternatives.
Oh, Ben. Well, thank you for your honesty. So they're not interested at all in bringing it down for the good people of Wellington?
No, and we've gone through, a very large process where we've had to cut money out of our capital infrastructure, so we bring down our debt to revenue ratio so that we've got more ability to borrow if there's a disaster. And that has taken a large toll in terms of staff and work. But nonetheless, their decision not to look at the operational side of the budget has been totally one of councillors. And I'm on the left. I think we need to raise rates quite significantly to invest in our huge challenges. But what I want to be able to do is put my hand on heart and go, the opportunity cost of a 12% rates rise down to 10% is we have to close that library or that pool, and that is so unpalatable that 12% is the justification. Our councillors don't want to engage in that conversation or that justification, and the people of Wellington lose out for it.
Oh, interesting you say that, Ben, because how important is it to retain the community facilities such as the Begonia House, and you mentioned the Pool Kandala?
Yeah, I think that people have rightfully seen really big rates rises in Wellington over the last few years, and some of that has been absolutely unavoidable. The cost of materials that council buys has gone up, COVID price inflation, all of the likes, and water infrastructure issues. But what they're then seeing is the council going, we're raising your rates, but also the local facilities that you rely on or that you love to go to, we want to close those. And people can't square the two. There's been a feeling, and I think it's somewhat justified, that the council really hasn't gone to look into its back pocket so much as it's just scrounging down the back of couch cushions, as we'll get to when we talk about motorcycle parking. Yeah. So I think the justification for those facilities being closed while the council continues to operate with a relatively laissez-faire approach to its general finances, those things don't square. People have clued on to that, and that's why they've created such controversy. And then the other element is that these facilities, the story of them is actually the same as our social housing or as our pipes. Previous councils have sweated the asset, they've deferred the maintenance, and now the bill has come due at the worst possible time for the city. So we're trying to fix our pipes, we're trying to fix our social housing, trying to fix Kandala Pool and Begonia House. And I went to Begonia House on Friday, and, it just looks sad. And you go, why weren't we maintaining these things to avoid the need for suddenly a giant capital jump in one hit? And I don't have the answers for that, unfortunately, having only been there for 2 years. But it's a maddening frustration felt by many Wellingtonians.
Just now catching your tail. Now, this is the one that's quite controversial too, Ben, following a 13-5 council vote in favour of charging motorcycles and scooters parking fees, and also takes the honour of being the first city in New Zealand to do so. Which way did you vote, Ben?
I was very much on the opposition and probably leading up the opposition. It ended up being a 12-6 vote as one of the councillors corrected his vote, but it wasn't close in the end. And yes, we have the dubious honour of being the first city in New Zealand to introduce motorcycle parking charges. It's insanity.
Now, we've got for those that don't know, it's $1 per hour with a daily cap of $6 in designated motorcycle bays, so 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. What's the feedback been like? Has it kicked in today, Ben?
It kicks in 1 July, but the feedback is ruthless because this is actually one of those rare issues that cuts across the political spectrum. So again, being on the left, there's an environmental benefit to people using motorcycles over cars. They're better for congestion, they produce less emissions. There's a cost of living argument. I was in the submissions where people came into us. We had student workers that park their moped, their 50cc moped, when they do a hospitality shift. For them to recoup 1 day's worth of parking charges at $6 with this year's measly minimum wage increase, they've got to work about 28 hours. So there's a cost of living argument. Then there's just also a really good democratic argument. 80% of submissions were opposed to going ahead with the charge. Now, you can't do everything in council based purely on public feedback. 80% of Wellingtonians said we should spend $100 million on a statue of Donald Trump. That would not be a wise decision. Councillors would have to think about criteria other than the 80% feedback. But nonetheless, it's still a really important part of your decision making. And for the mayor, the chair of the committee, the deputy mayor, and most councillors just to go, yes, 80% is an unprecedented level of opposition to a transport change, but we're going to go do it anyway. It's really bad for the credibility of this council because people already think when you go out in the public, why should I talk to council? The decision's already made. They don't listen. And genuinely, sometimes, Leah, the decision's not made and we do listen. But I don't think no one in council can now go hand in heart out to the community and say, hey, look, come talk to the council, we'll listen. Because when 80% of people said, hey, please don't do this, we went ahead and ploughed through anyway.